House of the Dragon has left me feeling empty. And not in a good way, not in a I need to see what happens next way, but instead in a meh, a lack of resolution way. This has eroded much of my enjoyment in the House of the Dragon show. So today, I want to explain why that is and how you can avoid making the same mistake in your stories. How you can leave your reader satisfied and yet wanting more. So welcome to another episode of Just in Time Worlds with your host, Marie Mullaney. First, I want you to cast your mind back to Season 1 and the Crab Feeder. Now, I had problems with Season 1 regardless of the Crab Feeder. The time skips did not work for me. I did not enjoy having to reconnect with the characters every time the episodes changed. It just got tiresome. But the Crab Feeder conclusion was particularly egregious in terms of my enjoyment of the show going lacking. So the show built up the Crab Feeder to be the central villain of the story. We have raids taking place. We have some of his backstory. We have Coryllis complaining about him. And then we have Daemon going to oppose him, proving that Daemon is this immense Gary Stew with plot armor of doom who can fight his way across the beach. One man against a whole army, and should he get into a touch of trouble, there's his dragon. Not that he needed saving, because he got up from the beach with arrows sticking out of his leg like no one had ever gotten injured from an arrow in the whole of history. Anyway, so Daemon stalks into the cave. And I was expecting, in my naivete, that we would see the fight between Daemon and the Crab Feeder. And this would be the conclusion of that storyline. Or perhaps, if the storyline wasn't done yet, Daemon would come out and say the Crab Feeder was gone, and the storyline would continue with a continuing quest to find the Crab Feeder. Instead, Daemon walks out with the Crab Feeder's head. That's it. This is not a resolution. You've built me up to a peak and then just gone, boom, done. This is how you start losing my trust. You tell me there's a peak coming, the storyline is going to build to a climax, and then you rob me of the climax. So that was the first thing that annoyed me. And here is my advice to you as a writer. If you are building up to a climax, give the reader the resolution they expect. Now, maybe you could argue that the Crab Feeder himself wasn't supposed to be the peak of the story, that it's about the politics that Daemon gains from the fight. Fine. If the focus is on Daemon gaining status or politics, etc., then why show me the fight on the beach? You build it up to a physical conclusion by showing me the fight on the beach, and then you give me nothing as the conclusion. You go from the rising action to the final slot, if we're using Save the Cat beats, and you skip all of the steps in between. There are a lot of missing steps there, and skipping them leaves me unsatisfied. Leaving your viewer that unsatisfied needs to have a plan to go with it. And even if you do have a plan, even if you have some magnificent payoff coming for this, you need your viewers to trust you enough to keep watching, or your readers enough to trust you enough to keep reading. With House of the Dragon, they had already lost a great deal of my trust beforehand with the time skips, and that skipping of the resolution, that made me lose more. I started skipping episodes, reading summaries, and basically deciding if I want to catch an episode here and there, because I no longer trusted the show. And as far as I can see, there is no payoff for that Crab Feeder fight. It's a fight that never happens, with no resolution and no plan. So don't do that. If you are building to a conclusion, actually give your audience that conclusion. Resolve the scene. Or if you're not going to give them a conclusion and there's some kind of payoff coming for that, okay, I would still advise consider other options, but okay. At least give the audience some kind of promise of that payoff and then pay it off. Give me clues that there's a payoff coming. Make sure I trust you enough to keep going with your story and actually give me the payoff. So that's the first problem, where you don't actually show the resolution that you have built up to. And that was one of my big problems with House of the Dragon Season 1. But there is a second thing that House of the Dragon did in Season 2 that is driving me bananas. I am going to talk about that next, and it's what I call the Cliffhanger Disease. So let's talk about cliffhangers. Season 2 of House of the Dragon feels completely unresolved. The only person who had any kind of real character arc that came to some kind of conclusion was Daemon, and even his arc felt rushed. They had to literally inject a piece of magic prophecy to get him to the point where he feels he has purpose, and that is the conclusion of his story arc. It feels like they needed to use a deus ex machina to get him to decide that he doesn't want to be king and bow to Rhaenyra. But more importantly, they cut off the season without resolution to the conflict. And this is the advice that I've seen drifting around on the internet. Write your scene, then cut the last few paragraphs to leave your reader hungry for more. And it drives me nuts. It drives me bananas. That is not a cliffhanger. That is not how you keep your readers. That is how you give your readers such cliffhanger fatigue that they stop reading. I have literally stopped reading a series where there are books in the middle of it that end on those kinds of cliffhangers. If you cannot, in one book, give me at least some character growth or story resolution, I'm done. I'm not doing your series, I'm putting your books down, and I will never read you again. A cliffhanger should actually work like this. You have the conflict of your scene, of your book, of your season, whatever it is that we're discussing, and that conflict resolves. It is done. Then you have the little sparkling future of the next conflict, the conflict that is coming in Season 2, in Book 2, in the next scene. That way, the reader feels like the conflict that they have been invested in has been resolved. They can trust you, the author, to resolve their conflict. And then they see, oh, there's a new conflict coming. That's great. I wonder what is going to happen. And that new conflict can leave the characters in a dire situation. They can have lost a battle. Okay? Their enemy can be standing over them and taking them captive. That's fine. The battle has been resolved, right? And they lost. How will they survive? That's the next conflict. Now, the reason why cutting the scene off in the middle is so bad is also because of the impact it's going to have on the next season, the next series, the next book. Let's say you cut it off while people are still in battle, before the battle is resolved, or before the conflict is entered, or whatever. You start the next season with the end beats of your story. So you're literally telling a story that ends the story and then starts the next one, as opposed to just starting a new story here and continuing it in the next book. And that is what is bothering me about Season 3 of House of the Dragon. So either they are going to just leave a hole where they don't tell us what happened and just continue on about the battle, Or they're literally going to start with a battle and it's going to be the end beat of a story. It's nuts. It's idiotic. It's the same thing for deleting the end part of your scene and saying that's how you build tension. So in your next scene, what are you going to do? You're going to start with the end of the previous scene so that there can be some kind of resolution to the conflict that you left unresolved in the previous scene. That is not a cliffhanger. A cliffhanger is showing a tantalizing hint of the next conflict, not leaving the current conflict unresolved. End the conflict, satisfy the reader, and give them a spark of what's coming. That's a cliffhanger, not whatever the heck House of the Dragon was doing at the end of season 2. Now, obviously, House of the Dragon has done very well for itself and will no doubt continue to do so in season 3. A lot of the writing in House of the Dragon has been truly excellent, and I'm not taking that away from the show at all. They have done a lot right. They've done some great world building. But I truly, deeply hope that this trend of cut the scene off in the middle and call it a cliffhanger will go out of fashion soon, because it is having a dramatic negative impact on my enjoyment of fantasy. Okay, I'm done. I hope you enjoyed this rant about resolving the conflict for your reader, and I hope you can see my point. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this, you might also enjoy my video on overpowered characters and how to deal with them, so check that out. Alternatively, you can trust the algorithms for its recommendation for what to watch next. Watching another video does help the channel grow. It tells the algorithm that I'm worthy of people's attention. So if you could do that, it would be great. If you want to financially support the channel, you can buy my epic fantasy books, which do resolve each book, or you can join the channel. Links to both are down below. If you want to connect around this or any other topic, I do have a Discord server with a great world building community, and I will see you soon for another episode from Just in Time Worlds, where we build what we need when we need it.